Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Charles Brownstein with the Comic Book Legal Defense Fund, a cause dear to Mr. Eisner, and today we're going to be talking about his enterprising life. Speaking with us today, seated beside me, is Jules Feiffer, a legendary cartoonist who found his beginnings in Will's shop. Denis, the publisher of Kitchen Sink Press, who began an association with Will Eisner in the 1970s that continued through Will's professional life and saw his transition from industrial magnate to graphic novelist. And beside him, Paul Levitz, whose storied career has seen probably the most enviable oral history of comics that just about any of us have had access to. Paul started out working in fanzines and ascended to be the president and publisher of DC Comics, where he brought Will's Spirit Archive library and graphic novel library out in definitive form. So thank you for coming out with us today. In the latter part of his life, Will Eisner kept an office in a nondescript Florida professionals building. Nestled between the offices of medical and dental practitioners was a small door for Will Eisner Studios Incorporated, an unassuming set of rooms where Will pursued his profession. When you walked in, there was a small hallway leading to the back of the space where Will separated his sensibilities into two sides of the same room. On the left side was an executive's desk surrounded by walls of awards and commendations honoring his crusading path as a booster for the comics medium. The desk itself was filled with neatly stacked piles of correspondence, books sent from other cartoonists as tribute or for his blessing or endorsement, and manila file folders, presumably containing his most recent contracts. This side was proud and stood as a showcase of his distinguished achievements. On the right was a modest, simply appointed art studio. The walls were unadorned and the work area was marked by an ancient wood light table, a small drafting desk, and countertops with neatly stacked piles of his most recent pages. It was almost Spartan in its lack of adornment. When I visited it to do the book Eisner Miller, Will was proudest of the fact that he was able to use his dirty inkwell water as wash for the tones on the book he was working on. He horrified Frank Miller with a pencil stub attached to a makeshift extension device that he was currently using to draw. "I'm a child of the Depression," he bragged. Will liked to speak of having a dual nature. He excelled at business and attributed that skill to his mother, who was depicted in his books as a well-meaning, worrying lady who encouraged him towards the practical. And he said that his true desire, his sole desire, was for art, which he attributed to his father, who was an amateur artist and who created stage dressing for the Yiddish theater in the New York tenements where Will was raised. There's been a lot of discussion of Will Eisner's path of the artist over the years, partly from his own discussion of his life and partly from the work that was coming out over the last 30 years, the graphic novels that were blazing his path as an artist. But the vast majority of his career was actually spent in business. First, he was the co-owner and studio runner for Eisner & Eiger, a shop that prepared comics for the sale to the early comic book industry. And then as the head of the shop that created Spirit, the now famed newspaper supplement comic. And following the Spirit, he created American Visuals, a shop preparing comics for military and industrial education use. Today we're here to talk with Will Eisner, the entrepreneur, and to understand how his work as a businessman informs and contrasts his body of art.